Welcome back to the Talk It Out podcast. My name's Dan from UK Bike Fit, and this is Jen, physio, bike fitter and ex-elite triathlete. And we've got Morgan Newberry, paracyclist with us today, who's also, if she's not going to tell you already, silver medalist at the World Champs most recently. So, topic today, we're going to talk about British cycling funding and how it all works and what the process is with how athletes are paid and where British Cycling get their money from, and shed a little bit light on that. So do you want to tell us a little bit first about how British Cycling as an organisation are funded and what dictates how much money they get?
Yeah, so what I understand, British Cycling get their money from UK Sports, which is basically, it's a kind of job lot of money that they get for a 4-year cycle, and it's the amount that it is depends on their success at the previous Paralympics. It seems like a lot of money, but I think often you've got to remember it's for 4 years. So I think it was about 8 million they had for the last cycle, but it pays for everything in British Cycling. So yeah, 8 million is a lot, but when it pays for staff, maybe the buildings stuff, it definitely pays for equipment. Like running costs of things, going away, which costs so much money.
Even your kit, cycling kit's expensive.
Yeah, and all the kit, but mainly like things like the bikes, like the new bikes they've had, it costs so much money. But yeah, they get their money from UK Sport.
What bikes are they?
Well, they've obviously, they don't have a bike sponsor as such, but they are, whatever their relationship is with Hope, I'm not too sure, but Para definitely aren't sponsored by Hope, because we have to buy in, like we've got all of the old Hope bikes is what they've just raced on at the Paralympics, but we didn't have any forks, so a lot of money was spent from the Para budget that we didn't really have getting the forks for the Hope bikes that were from AB.
Okay, so that 8 million, that's just for paracycling?
Yes.
Not cycling?
No, I think cycling is more like nearer to 30 million in the 4 years. So AB and Para have completely separate budgets, just because that's the way it works from UK Sport. But 8 million is a lot of money for a para sport. I think it's one of the top funded sports.
Sure. And how's the overall amount of money determined? Like who decides how much of this big pot of money that paracycling gets?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing it is from success, maybe from what they say they need, how many riders they have.
Yeah, but I think it's largely determined on your success from the Olympics.
Yeah, okay.
So if sports have a poor performance at the Olympics, maybe World Champs as well. I think it's more Olympics.
I think it's all it's an Olympic
so
cycle.
if a sport has a poor performance, then they will then get less money, and the money obviously funds athletes and staff. So then they might have to if they have a really bad performance and they go down loads of money, they might have to cut staff, but also cut athletes. That's when athletes might get cut off programs, but they also might get cut off the program because they've not performed. So then the sport hasn't got the money to then try and get them to perform again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when we're saying performance, we're meaning medals, basically.
Yeah, completely medals.
Medals.
It's only medals, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't care about your 4th, 5th, 6th place. It's just a gold, silver or bronze. I don't think it matters on the colour. It is just medals. Because they don't normally care about medals from the Paralympic or Olympics. So yeah, I think it is just, they need medals. Yeah.
And UK Sport, that's the organisation that's lottery funded.
So I'm actually not, I think UK Sport gets a lot of their money from government funding.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other, but the National Lottery plays a large part in funding. So when you play the lottery, a lot of that money goes to UK Sport to then fund the athletes.
Yeah, and all of the athletes are funded by the National Lottery.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 8 million pot from UK Sport is separate to what the athletes get as funding. Yeah.
Okay. So then so if this 8 million pot isn't inclusive of athletes' salaries and funding, how is that determined then for each athlete?
So for each, basically every GB athlete who is on a signed contract within a GB programme will receive an athlete performance award, which is called an APA. And there's 5 different levels, depending on basically their performance, and they're nominated for it. But it's through National Lottery. It isn't it's not a contract with whoever your governing body is. You're not being paid by your governing body. It doesn't mean you're employed by your governing body. It's basically just to give you to give you money.
It's a grant basically.
It's completely, that's what it is.
Tax free.
Yeah, it's
so you're not being employed, because people have in the past tried to sue their governing bodies, haven't they?
Yes.
And like say that they're their employer, but that you're not. It's tax.
It's very clear they are
Yeah.
not. You are not in a contract that is of employment
Yeah.
with them. This is you're right. It's a grant.
Yeah. And then each sport will set their own criteria for how you have to get onto A, B, C, whatever funding. And yeah, like Morgan said, if you meet that criteria, you then get nominated by your sport. But then it's still your federation that choose who goes onto that. So there's, might be times where some people should or shouldn't feel like they should or shouldn't be on a certain type of funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you could be, say, meeting the criteria,
Yeah.
but if you're not on the programme, then you're not going to be getting the money. So yeah, it gets political like that, but it's just sport. And
but I think that's
jobs.
every sport.
It's life.
Yeah.
So you've obviously gone through this process as well when you were racing as a triathlete. So how is you said like about ABCD, like just explain a little bit about what that is and how you get yourself onto each one of those levels. Is it solely performance based or is there other criteria?
So A is just the top level of funding, and it just fairly straight, self-explanatory.
So A is more money.
Yeah,
B, C,
yeah.
D.
And then basically it's largely performance based. So you have to have got, if you've got a world champs or an Olympic medal, then you would be on A funding. And then it just goes down and each sport is different. So some sports it might be easier or harder depending on how many competitive people are in that sport to get onto that certain level of funding.
Yeah.
And it's also like some of the lower brackets is like the potential you've showed. So sometimes like there might be like a younger person and an older person who have got exactly the same results. They might then choose the younger person because they've got more potential to like grow through the sport than somebody who's like about to retire or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty cutthroat. That older person might have better results and more medals and more results in terms of
being an athlete is cutthroat altogether because everything relies on your results. So like all your sponsorship, everything, it's not just that funding, like all your other things outside of that. Mm-hmm. But then also if you earn above a certain threshold from like your sponsorship, your prize money, all those kind of extra things that you add on, you then won't receive your lottery funding because you don't need it.
Yeah. I think it's like, there's a certain cap on the amount that you could earn in any, whether it's sponsorship, jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
They cut you off, which is fair.
Yeah, which is, I think is totally fair.
You could earn a lot of money.
Yeah, if you're in a sport that's got like loads of prize money and stuff, like, then you don't, need, if you're earning a few £1 million as some of like the cyclists are earning on their contracts, then they don't need like a Great British funding of like however much money it is, do they?
Yeah, and like actually thinking about cycling, if you think about the people who guess for British cycling, they won't ever be being paid by British cycling. They're just on the guess that they ride for British cycling. It's like maybe more like the track riders who are, they kind of only really race at the international events for GB and that's their job. So they're getting the funding for that. But
but like
people
Tom
racing,
Pidcock,
he's
who
not
then
getting
does, like
any
a
money.
mountain bike race and a world's race, he won't then be getting funding from Great Britain, but he's also getting paid so much other money that I think he's fine about it.
He's fine, I think.
The GB funding's like such a drop in the ocean, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It's not needed on him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that how it works for you then in terms of the ABCD levels? Like, now that you've won a World Championships medal, how does that affect your funding for the next few years?
So what I think is really like pretty unique and pretty special about the situation that I'm in now is that because I've secured a world's medal, I've moved up a funding bracket and it's actually secured for 3 years, that's not normal in the job. That's pretty unique, and I feel pretty lucky that now I'm going to kind of have funding confirmed, which means I don't have to worry about like the bills sort of thing.
It's definitely unique as an athlete to have something for 3 years, and also something like that's definite for 3 years, because you can sign a 3-year deal with like Adidas or whatever, but if you do crap in the first year, like that 3-year deal doesn't mean anything. They'll just
like as long as you're following, like as long as you've like committed to the program, which I feel like I'm, obviously they probably would, I'm hoping that they will say you will have you on the program for another 4 years, but like as long as you're showing that you're following kind of your targets, you don't even have to, I don't think I'd have to get that result again the next 3 years. Like I will be fine. That is secured, the funding is there for 3 years, and that's the way it works. So it takes a big relief off my shoulders because I've been on like not such secure funding before this, and actually just not as good. It's not been the best money. The Athlete Performance Awards have been the same for I don't know how many years, but a good 10 years, I think. So 10 years ago, I think that to be on the top funding was actually like, wow, this is really good. And I'm not saying it's not good now, but I think, just with the way that everything's gone up in price, it's not, there's a lot of people saying, I think there was a poll that came out the other week actually, and it was like a lot of athletes are thinking about not staying for the next 4 years just because of the Athlete Performance Awards still not being any more money. But yeah, for me, I'm really happy with it, and it's put me in a good situation.
So a lot of athletes thinking about leaving that as a career because the funding they're getting isn't enough to basically, that's not a living wage. They can't afford to pay the bills.
It's definitely a living wage. From C funding, it is definitely good money to live off. But I think, people are greedy. I think there's once you get to the top, which is basically £28,000, but it's tax free. That's what you get. This is the maximum amount. But I think people who maybe have been doing sport for the last 10 years, I guess they just want more maybe, and that's what they're saying. But they are arguing that it's not enough to live off, but I would say I don't agree. Yeah.
Okay. So,
and they do have performance lifestyle advisors who will help you with all your funding and all that kind of if you're struggling with money and stuff, they'll help you with all of those things. So you get that for free as well.
You get a lot of things for free being an athlete, actually.
Okay. Aldi vouchers apparently.
Yes, Aldi sponsor both Team GB and Paralympics GB, so you get Aldi vouchers. Special buys.
Free special buys, that's the best thing I've been in anything. So after this result then, would you have still got 3 years, albeit on less money potentially, without this result, or is the next 3 years secured only because you've just got the World Champs medal?
For me, the next 3 years is only secured because of this World Champs medal. It wasn't secured before that.
So up until that point, what was the deal? When were you contracted till?
It was like a yearly, so I would sign a yearly, I've signed it until Christmas basically, and I'm just waiting for a new agreement to come through. But I know that looking at the criteria that is then guaranteed for 3 years. So it's just because you've one-upped yourself basically. It's just a perk.
Yeah. And not only is it 3 years, you go up a level of funding as well.
So I should go up to B funding, which is a big jump from C funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does that mean in terms of the next goal for you is LA Paralympics? So if you're contracted for 3 years, then what happens in that time? Have you got certain criteria you've got to meet to keep that level, or how does it work in terms of results and performance up until that point?
It's kind of I think that it's them putting their confidence in you. There's no real targets or anything that yet. Okay. Things will come, but there's no pressure on that. It's just that's the way it works. That you've now met that criteria. That's what happens. Yeah, from what I know. I don't know if you know anything else.
Yeah, no, that's with the British side of things. I think if you're some people get Home Nation funding as well. So the funding that I used to receive through the Isle of Man. So some people will get Home Nation if they compete at Commonwealth for England, Wales, Scotland, blah blah. That was very different, and that was they could chop you at any time, and it was very target focused, even though they gave you barely any money.
You could still get chopped off the programme. They have every December, I think. Well, you can get taken off the programme no matter what. Obviously, it goes through a certain process. But I think December is the month where they can just get rid of you without having to give you all of those targets, which is basically if, we don't want you going forwards, which is fair. But I would hope I'm not in that situation. But it's coming up that we'll maybe find out if people are changing from the programme.
Okay. So how's that changed since you were an athlete, which wasn't that long ago? But is there any major differences now, how you got paid and how Morgan gets paid? And
no, that all sounds the same. I just like I said, I had Home Nation funding too, which was very different, and they had a full restructure in the Isle of Man while I was under that funding target, and I actually my last year just declined my funding because it just got so ridiculous for actually such a small amount of money that it wasn't worth the stress of it. You were being told that you had to meet all of these because small nations fund they've got so many different sports, they can't make a criteria for one sport, so they were trying to make criteria that I would be on the same funding as someone who was a shooter, and that it was just ridiculous. And then it just all got for a small amount of money, and I knew that it was going to be my last year, and I just decided that I didn't actually want it. So yeah, the Home Nation funding works differently, but you have to, that's usually through like a Commonwealth, and then to be fair, the Commonwealth is sort of dying a death now, so that might all go as well.
So on top of funding then, you mentioned free perks. So what sort of like help do you get in terms of equipment and like coaching and anything like performance related to help you achieve?
Yeah, so I'm guessing every governing body is different, but in cycling and under paracycling, we are coached internally, which is, you know, there's only like 5 coaches, but there's a good coaching group, and then we all get equipment-wise. You get a race bike for every discipline you're racing in. So, you know, I'm looking to have basically every bike you would need. And then there's like all of the support that comes from the extra staff they've got, like you said.
Support staff, so there's like physio, psychology, performance lifestyle, physiology.
Yeah, and there's like biomechanics. Yeah. I mean, there's everything you could think of. Doctors, yeah, that's actually a big thing. There's, like the physio and doctor team is probably a big part of it. There's a lot of support that you kind of, it's the people who go and recognise, isn't it?
And also like all of that stuff is stuff that you would normally have to pay for. So I think like as well as getting the funding, you don't have to pay for so much stuff, which is what people like who complain about the funding kind of forget, that actually in real life, like yes, you might get paid more in a job, but if you wanted to go and see a physio tomorrow, you'd have to pay for it. If you wanted to not be on an NHS waiting list because you thought you had a stress fracture, you'd have to pay for it. Like psychology, you'd have to pay for like all of those extra things.
There are
and I think those are like huge benefits and like really like amazing things to get.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like there's like nutrition stuff as well, whether that's sponsored products and also just advice. But yeah, like you say, I think people do forget that there's this massive package, and like
you're just looked after.
You're looked after, and actually it's interesting you say that, because I was just thinking back to when I raced for Loughborough Lightning, and they gave that package. That was the package they gave. They were like a, you know, kind of an amateur race team, but they were offering all of that support as being part of, and that was what was
like,
unique.
Use the gym, like you don't have to buy a gym membership. You've got an S&C coach there with you, like all of that kind of stuff. You've got like essentially a private athlete gym. You can just go and train whenever you need to.
So looking at the ABCD criteria for this is across all sports, isn't it?
Yeah, the matrix is across all sports.
Okay, so an A level athlete would be on £28,000 a year, tax-free, and a B-level athlete would be on £21,500. So just give us an idea in paracycling what you would have to do to be an A-level or a B-level athlete.
Yes, I mean, I've not memorised the criteria, but I think for A...
You're not prepared for this podcast?
You just did, I'm going to get it wrong. I think like for A, it's basically either a Paralympic gold medal or a World Championships gold medal. I think it's a little bit mean, because I think a Paralympic medal should get you onto the best funding. So I think that's a big, you've taken 4 years to get there, but it's also not, it is gold.
What the funding, that's how they get their next.
But in paracycling, it definitely is paracycling gold medal, I'm pretty sure. Like, I mean, don't quote me, but I am pretty sure. But yeah, then B is like a World Championships medal or any other Paralympic medal. Yeah, and that's like classed as like being on podium. So like you're on the programme as a podium rider, which means, I mean, I guess it just means you're on the podium.
No, well, doesn't it mean like essentially if you're on podium, then they think you are due for a podium at the next Olympics, and then podium potential is for people who are like, well, potentially going to be on the podium, but aren't like.
I think you're very right, actually. No, that definitely sounds right, doesn't it? I think I've seen that in a different way. What Jen says is right.
So podium potential then would be C and D.
C, D, I think there's an E as well, but yeah, like the money, I think what's C saying is like 15?
So C is £15,000 a year, D is £12,000 a year, and there is an E as well, which is £6,000 a year.
Yeah, so I think like these are riders, I mean, C is, you know, I've been on the squad for many years on C. I came on actually as D, so yeah, that's just like they're supporting you, so you're getting money and you're not actually on the podium of what they want, so it's pretty fair.
And you're getting free.
You're getting the support.
You still get all the support,
except for the Aldi vouchers.
Yeah.
The Aldi vouchers are saved for the
course.
podium.
Only for the best.
God.
But you're getting
What do you
all
think
the,
about
You're getting everything.
You're
You're
getting
getting the
the
coaching,
physio,
the full
the
package,
yeah.
the bikes,
The gym,
like
all the kit.
so many bikes, all the
that stuff.
kit.
Yeah.
And then like there's some riders who I think is a newer thing with British Cycling who are like, if they're on their talent programs, they're getting like a little bit of money every month, which I think is really cool. Like they're getting, it might be 500 quid, but I'm guessing they're still working, and that's just extra money to pay for training camps or bikes or races. So
Yeah, so that's
And
gonna be my
it's
next
all
question.
tax-free money. So when people listen to this and think, "Oh, I could not survive off that,"
It's tax-free.
because- Yeah. So you get all
just
of the
that.
money.
So most of these CDE, podium potential athletes, even A and B, are they working alongside this income to, and most people have second jobs, or is this like, this is it?
From what I've experienced being a rider on the programme, nearly everyone is just will call themselves a full-time rider. I think that's, especially cycling, like you commit a lot of time to training, but I think it's because there's clearly enough money to live off. So I think unless you're spending all your money at a cafe, it's kind of all right.
Which cyclists,
that can be the issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think like this whole the Athlete Performance Award is actually a very lucky thing that British athletes get, and it's only because of national lottery money that it happens. It's not the same in every country. Like, I've spoken to so many different nations, and they do not get this package. It's very much more cutthroat. Like Jen was saying, this is pretty legit. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your insight into funding and athlete funding and British cycling funding and how everything works. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.